All right, so welcome to our May Balance of State COC HMIS user meeting. Happy to have all you here. And we have kind of a briefer agenda today. We're going to give you a couple updates around a new guide posted public online and the point in time housing inventory count. And then for our How We Can Help section, we really want to focus in on some things that we've learned from the point in time and housing inventory count cleanup, and talk about Project Start, a little refresher there, and some information around housing move-in dates for permanent housing providers. And then we'll look at our calendar and address any questions or demonstrations that y'all need. All right, feel free to chat if you have anything that you'd like covered today during that last section, and we'll definitely have time. Thank you. We'll definitely address any concerns or other questions you want to review. So let's start off with system updates. Okay, so we have a new guide released for the history color bar. And what does this history color bar do? It helps you review past responses for any given question. And so this can really be helpful in trying to figure out how a question got there, it was updated, but also can help you make corrections for inaccurate data entry potentially. You can find something that might be flagging on a report or do any corrections there. All right, and this is posted on our training and knowledge page. That's just ncceh.org/HMIS/training, and it's listed there under the resources and guides section for history color bar. And so we've walked through this together at previous user meetings, but this was really apparent that it was a helpful tool for housing inventory count and point in time count correction. So we kind of formalized that a little bit in the color bar. What this guide does is it shows us how to find the history color bar, when to use it, and also how to make some corrections based off that. So if that is an available resource for you there. All right, and if you can mute yourself as you join us, just to cut down on the background noise, that'd be great. All right, so we've been talking about point in time and housing inventory count for many moons at this point. We had the night, the pit count night on January 27th, and we did that on January 27th. The point in time count is really focusing on the emergency shelter and transitional housing folks that you all were serving on that night. And this year we did not do the unsheltered count for the balance of state given the pandemic difficulties. The housing inventory count, just as a reminder, this is our kind of core set of project types: emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent housing projects, both rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. So we've done a lot of work really drilling down on an individual level for clients. I would check every single client that y'all submitted, right? For complete demographics, for housing move-in dates, all of that. And we're happy to report that has been submitted, that is complete. And so now we'll kind of reflect on what we learned about this process, want to get some feedback from you probably next month, and start planning for next year. So really appreciate all of your help in getting this submitted and completed. It was quite the back-to-back reporting seasons this year. And so this was kind of our final federal report after LSA and system performance measures. So thank you again for all your help in helping us submit this for the community. All right, so let's go into our kind of refresher section here, how we can help. And let's talk about when does enrollment start in HMIS? So this is, this may seem like a basic question, but it's really important that we're all aligned on this so that we know both what our own project is doing, when our own project's enrollments or project start dates should occur, but also what other projects reflect in the community as well. So when you're case conferencing, you're working on a binding list, you can understand why someone would or wouldn't be showing up in that list. So let's talk about when does enrollment start. The key thing about that question is our project, our data collection stage of project start. And so this is what we call the way to identify when an enrollment starts. This is really looking at intakes. What data are we collecting and entering for intake to establish that client's initial status? We've really, this is required for all clients. Everyone needs a start date in order to record services that you're providing for them. And the data that is collected for project start really shouldn't be edited if it changes. So this is really kind of what we describe as a snapshot of the client on their first day, that intake. If there's any changes to that data, then we have other tools, other data collection stages to address that, like our interim updates, annual assessments, or exits. And just one other thing to note here is that this is really different for each project type. It's all reflecting when the services begin, but because different project types have different services, it can look a little bit different. So let's break that down. For project start date, we have broken out the different categories of project types with street outreach, then the residential homeless projects, permanent housing homeless projects, and all other projects like BE. So for street outreach, this is really about that first contact between a client and their outreach workers, which can seem a little sometimes hard for street outreach, but there's other data collection along the way to help with that. For our shelters and transitional housing projects, this is the core service of that project is the sheltering, right? Is the fact that folks are able to sleep in a unit or a location provided by you. And so the start date is about the first night the client sleeps in a bed, when their head hits that pillow. And that's really different than permanent housing projects where you're working with a client for weeks, maybe months to find housing, to do that housing search, get documentation together maybe. And so for permanent housing projects, this is when an eligible client accepts the offer of available services. So it's really this kind of triple whammy of like, are they eligible? Do they agree? And do you actually have services available? So that's not just someone being on a wait list. That's when the services are available. And then for supportive services or a CE projects, this is about the first delivery of services. All right, and I'm getting a little bit of background noise, so I'm just going to mute us, but you can definitely unmute yourself if you have questions. Okay, let's see, did I mute myself? No, okay, great. All right, so I want to walk us through some examples here and really want to encourage you to participate here in Henrietta's journey. So we're going to meet Henrietta, and she's just our example client here for some better examples around HMIS data collection and entry. So let's take a look first at our project start date for street outreach. We've got a couple different dates here where first Henrietta has her first contact on May 1st, and then the outreach worker is able to hear about some challenges and get some kind of basic medical supplies for her, and delivers that on the second contact, May 4th. They're still building that relationship. On the third contact, There's kind of another exchange, have some more kind of hygiene products available for the client on May 5th. And just a week later, May 7th, that's their fourth contact, and the outreach worker is able to make a case plan with the client. They're kind of accepting those services and sign an ROI. So when we're thinking about street outreach, let's do a little poll here. All right, so there's two questions that I'm going to launch in this poll. One is, what is the correct date for project start? So let's see, out of these four different options, is it the first contact, the second contact, third contact, or fourth? And then what is the date of engagement? This is kind of a tricky one, but you'll need to answer that second question in order to submit. So we'll give you about another few seconds, 30 seconds or so. With Zoom, you do need to answer both questions in order to submit. See folks coming in there. Excellent. So when should the outreach worker record a project start date in HMIS? And at what point does the client have a data engagement? And that second question is a little bit of a curveball, I know. All right, just a couple more seconds here, and we'll end that polling. Okay, let's take a look at the results together here. So for question one, the majority of us did get that right. Project start for street outreach is first contact. So that is when you meet the client where they are, maybe on the streets or in another unsheltered location. So that is going to be the first contact. The difference with street outreach is that they also record what's called a date of engagement. And that is the fourth contact. When the client engages, they create the case plan and actually sign the ROI. So this is when a client is really saying, okay, I'm in it, we're going to work together, I'm ready to work with you as an outreach worker. And this can be really, so what this does is it allows street outreach to have a period of time to get to know the client, because building trust can take a while. But by recording both a project start date and a date of engagement separately, we can really see, how long that engagement takes. And also, the one key thing for street outreach is you're not graded on data quality until the date of engagement. So once you have a date of engagement, you've got to have all that intake questions there. But before that, it's really still in that kind of building the relationship period. And I'll just say that this is the language from HMIS. I know that engagement is kind of like assessment, where like we use that word a lot in a lot of different places. So awesome. All right. Well, thanks for challenging yourselves with that. I've got chat here. I'm going to check out. Hello. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And there we go. Okay. All right, let's go to the next project type here. Oh, and so our project start date, was 5/1, that first contact with Henrietta. All right, let's try this again with residential homeless projects, our shelter, emergency shelter, and transitional housing. So what is the start date for Henrietta as in this example, in this timeline? 6/1, when she requests shelter, she's made it known to maybe her outreach worker that she would like shelter. 6/4, when she sleeps in a bed, she actually gets those shelter services. Or at 6/5, when she has that first in-house case management. And this is just one question, so you can submit that right when you know the answer. All right, got a lot of folks coming in here. We'll give you another 5 seconds or so. Folks are getting quick with this one. All right, I'm going to close it out here. And the majority of us are correct. When we're talking about a residential homeless project like shelter and transitional housing, it's when the client sleeps in the bed. When their head hits the pillow, that is the correct project start date. And that's because their core services are really about that sheltering, that opportunity to shelter. So great job, folks. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that and we'll keep going. So this is a little bit different, right, than street outreach, and it's helpful to know what those differences are. So as you talk with folks, you might know where they are in the stage of working with a client. Okay, so let's try permanent housing now. I'm throwing in homeless prevention here because it works the same way, but rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, or homeless prevention projects, what's the correct start date? So Henrietta here, she has got a referral to a project on 6/14. She had a check-in about eligibility on 7/1. It took a little while, right, for capacity to check on her eligibility. There's a case conferencing session, and she's accepted, agreed to that match. And then she's doing a housing search later that week, that same week on July 8th. So when is her correct start date? Let's do this next question here. I'm going to launch the poll. So out of these four kind of events for Henrietta, when should the rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, or homeless prevention project start that start date? When do their services begin? All right, coming in fast here. We're going to get a couple more seconds. Give you about 35 seconds here. And they're slowing down, so I'm going to end the polling. Okay, yes, absolutely, majority of us are correct. So with permanent housing, there is a little bit of a kind of building momentum, right? You need to know about the client. There needs to be some referral. There does need to be, you need to think that they're eligible, right? And then there is that matching process where, the client's accepting your services, or you're doing the case conferencing. And so all of those really need to come together for that project start. And then the other part of this is really the availability of services. If there's not a real spot for them, then they're not enrolled yet. Any other questions about that? Because this is a little bit of a trickier one. All right. And key thing, definitely everyone got this, is that it's not once you have like a housing search meeting, it's before that. It's also not the same as housing move-in date, right? So for our projects like rapid housing, permanent supportive housing, your start date is before a housing move-in date. And that's really key so that we can measure as a system the time it takes to move someone in. That can be a reflection of the housing market. It can be a reflection of, services or capacity, but really important outcome to measure. All right, let's keep going. So I've got another example here. Oops, getting a little overwhelmed with all these boxes. All right, so our 7/5 was the right date for that. And now just a little bit of a different case here. We've got when Henrietta actually starts from shelter and then gets is starting to work with a permanent housing project. What is her start date here? So Henrietta's sleeping at the shelter, has that coordinated entry assessment, maybe that yes to that, and then accepts and can access rapid rehousing services. And then on the 8th, she has that housing search meeting. So out of these options, when someone is coming from shelter. They may have a different kind of route for the VIS for that being done, right, in our case. And so what is her project start date? When should the rapid housing or permanent supportive housing record her start date in HMIS? All right, and this is, similar, but just a little bit of a different example of where Henrietta is starting. All right, I'm going to close that up. And yes, we are correct. So this is still the same standard applies. It's when the client accepts, it's after the assessment, right? And there are actually services available. So that's really key. Awesome, good job, y'all. Okay. And so that's our date, 7/5 for this timeline. Okay, let's talk about other projects like coordinated entry or supportive services only. These are projects that are not sheltering someone. They're not doing that move-in support rental assistance, but it's the services that can be dynamic, right? They can really range. So here Henrietta is presenting for services with some snacks on 5/1. And comes back for the community kitchen meal on 5/2. She engages in a budgeting class, another service from the agency or from the project on 6/10, and actually qualifies and gets some utilities assistance later that month on June 18th. So which of these events is the project start date for coordinated entry or supportive services only projects? All right, I needed to have some music keyed up here. Good stuff. I got some answers coming in. A little shy on some of those, so let's give you another 5 seconds or so, get those responses in. Okay, we're cutting it off. Okay, yes, exactly right. When she presents for services is the right answer for that project start date. So for these very services-based projects, supportive services only, the CE services, these are going to be when you first meet that client when they present. Okay, let's get that circled there. All right, and just as a reminder too, you can find this on the paper assessment form. It's up at the top, says date of data collection. This is what you'd want to fill in with those dates if you're using paper forms to collect. All right. Awesome. Any questions or comments about some of those responses? I think we're all in line here. Okay. Awesome. So we did want to clarify and kind of just do a little check-in on project start date. There was, sometimes we would find folks that hadn't had a start date during the HIG period, or maybe permanent housing had some trouble distinguishing that housing move-in date or project start date. And in particular, our permanent housing projects, we had a lot of questions around housing move-in date and making sure that those were recorded in the system. It's also important for our community conversations around, case management and when to exit someone from that coordinated entry project. So just want to refresh this a little bit. Housing move-in date is recording when a client is moving in and begins to sleep in a unit. And so that's really key. This is not called the lease date. This is the housing move-in date. And so this is really about when the client moves in. And this is collected for our permanent housing projects, not shelter, not transitional housing. It is also recorded for coordinated entry though, right? And so we did have some trouble with that during point in time in housing inventory count. We found that housing move-in date was maybe not consistently added. It wasn't timely, so we had a lot of folks needing to do some back data entry, and not recorded separately. So there's some different things about like evictions, when to record kind of multiple move-in dates, which actually is multiple enrollments. And so there was some that wasn't done consistently. So what we want to do is provide some support, given what we learned around PIT-HIC, and are asking permanent housing project users to join us on June 16th for some virtual training. And I will post that link, get that pulled up, for that opportunity in June. We will record it so you can view it after, but we really want to give you a heads up a little bit early, several weeks in advance, to see if we can get folks joining and they're live. I think it'll be more helpful, more valuable if folks are able to join live. And then we will follow up, the Data Center will follow up with agency administrators afterward to check in and make sure that your agency is ready to go for housing move-in date. All right. Any other questions about that support or TA? We are really want to make sure that that's clear and want to give some dedicated time for our permanent housing providers to focus on that. Okay. All right, let's go forward then with what's next. So those were the main things we wanted to check in with you on and let you know about. For the calendar, what's really exciting is like what's not on the calendar for the next few months. So you'll see we've got our statewide Bringing It Home conference. So you to register for that if you haven't. That's June 8th and 9th. And then our housing move-in date training for permanent housing providers is June 16th. Our next user meeting is right after that. So just, heads up, housing move-in date training is before our next user meeting. And then we don't have any federal reporting for a few months. So we are going to be looking at October, November for some other big events. The annual privacy refresher is going to be in October. And there are some new data standards that we'll be training you on as well that will be enacted in October. And we also will start looking at the longitudinal system analysis federal reporting then too. But between now and then, we are going to do some planning, we're going to shore up some things, and we've got a little bit of a breather here in terms of HMIS corrections. All right. So I definitely want to hear from you all if you have questions that have come up or you want to see something that you've wanted to learn more about in the system. Happy to demo that. But those are our updates for this month. Of course, you can always reach us at hmis@ncceh.org. And yeah, I'll leave it to you all. Do you want What would you like to see, or do you have any troubleshooting questions? And you can unmute yourself. You should have that ability. Let me know if not. Using that button with the microphone or *6 on the phone.
Hi, this is Natasha from Central Piedmont. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So those individuals like that get triaged from 211 into our rapid rehousing program, would the exit date to that triage be the date that we accept them into our program? Add them to our list. Like, what date would that date be?
Yeah. So for back at home, there's a triage project that helps hold folks before you're that are referred, but before you're actually accepting them into the program. The exit date is going to be the same as your start date for services. So it's going to be, you're going to exit them when you have that response to the referral. Make sure you're doing the coordinated entry event in there as well. There should be an open referral, and you can respond, went well, client accepted, or a successful referral, or whether the client said no, or you found out they weren't eligible. So there's a response there in the exit assessment. But that date is going to line up with your rapid rehousing or homeless prevention start date for back at home.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. And that's important for for other folks on the call, even if you're not maybe in back at home, it's helpful as you're looking at community by name lists to know what that means when someone's most recent provider is the back at home triage project. That means they've been connected, they've been assessed, we think they're eligible, but they haven't started their rapid rehousing or homeless prevention services. All right, and I've got a link here for us for that Bringing It Home conference. Got that in the chat. Yeah, there's some good sessions there, including sessions led by some of our community on the phone now. I think I saw Laura, you're doing a session on street outreach, I believe, and we're excited for that. Kevin is also, I think, on the call and doing a couple of sessions on racial equity and lowering barriers for shelter. So that's very exciting. There's some good balance of state coverage at this year's conference. And I'm sorry, Brian, I see you too. You're also presenting on lowering barriers. All right. Yes, absolutely. And Tina. Awesome. Thanks, Tina. All right. Well, I don't want to keep us for longer than we need. So I'm going to, unless there's other questions, I'll stop recording here and just give you the, let's see, I'll give you the, okay. I'll just give you the link here for the history color bar guide. And that is on our website for training and guides. All right, well, I'm going to stop recording now. If